Welcome, friends. You are watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we will discuss the global situation as of March 7th, 2026. Let us begin with Ukraine. In the early hours of March 7th, the Russian Federation launched a massive strike involving hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles, deliberately targeting energy infrastructure facilities. Strikes were carried out against Kiev and the Kiev region using drones and Iskander missiles, against the northern part of Zhytomyr region using Tsirkon hypersonic missiles, against Kharkiv, and against the southwestern part of Vinnytsia region, which received the greatest volume of munitions, including up to 24 caliber cruise missiles. To properly understand the logic behind today's strike, it must be viewed not as an isolated event, but as part of a coherent and sequential strategy. 10 days ago, in the early hours of February 26th, a strike was already carried out against the energy transmission line running between Vinnytsia and the Kiev 750 substation. On that occasion, the Ukrainian air defense system managed to intercept a significant portion of the incoming missiles and drones, and a number of experts assessed that strike as falling somewhat short of its intended objectives. It is worth noting that shortly before this, European countries, together with the American side, had carried out a major delivery of missiles for Patriot systems and other surface-to-air missile complexes. In all likelihood, this was one of the last large-scale deliveries of this kind before the onset of active hostilities in the Middle East. In effect, Kiev was given resources and implicitly told that from this point forward it would need to rely on its own capabilities. The current strike was directed against a different energy transmission line, running along the border with Romania and Moldova. The Transdnistrian power station came under attack, with an estimated 14 caliber missiles fired at the facility. Satellite imagery shows significant fires at the site. Notably, shortly before this strike, Ukraine had resumed electricity exports for the first time since late 2025, apparently directed toward Moldova. This strike, it would appear, has brought that export to a halt. Looking at both strikes together, a clear picture emerges. 10 days ago, the target was the Vinnytsia-Kiev transmission line. Today, it was the line running along the Moldovan and Romanian border. Russia is systematically working to fragment Ukraine's unified energy system into isolated islands, a western island, a central one, and a southern one. The western Ukrainian energy island will eventually be completely cut off from the southern and eastern regions. At the same time, western Ukraine hosts nuclear power plants and maintains a separate independent connection to the European energy grid, one that Russia cannot directly interfere with. As a result, the central, southern, and eastern regions remain the most vulnerable. Once the primary fragmentation is achieved, Russia will in all likelihood shift to more precise and targeted strikes aimed at further breaking down those energy zones into even smaller segments. The political context is also significant. A sharp conflict is currently unfolding between Slovakia, Hungary, and Ukraine over the resumption of oil transit through the Druzhba pipeline. Zelensky has publicly refused to restore the pumping of Russian oil, citing a matter of principle. In response, Hungary issued an ultimatum to Ukraine, giving it 3 days to restore the pipeline's operation. Kiev will in all probability ignore this ultimatum. Should that happen, Slovakia and Hungary may cut off their electricity supplies to Ukraine. This is precisely why the strike on the southern energy line, routed through Moldova and Romania, also serves a preemptive purpose. Russia is seeking to prevent Ukraine from compensating for potential electricity losses through alternative import routes. Simultaneously, strikes were carried out against the traction substations of railways connecting the western regions to the center of the country, particularly in the area of Korostyn. The objective is clearly to impede the movement of troops, ammunition, and military equipment from the western regions and from European territory toward the front line. The strike was therefore comprehensive in nature, simultaneously targeting energy facilities, logistical nodes, and military infrastructure. In Kharkiv, the use of an Izdeliye-30 missile carrying an 800-kilogram warhead resulted in the complete destruction of an entrance stairwell of a 5-story residential building from the 1st to the 5th floor. This is a striking illustration of the destructive power of the munition employed. In Kiev, strikes were recorded against power stations number 5 and 6, with 2 Iskander missiles hitting each. Satellite imagery shows fires and thermal anomalies at both sites. In Odessa, strikes were carried out against port infrastructure using no fewer than 20 Geran-type drones, with significant fires recorded in the port district by morning. We now move to the front line. Today, video footage appeared in open sources showing strikes conducted by Russian long-range drones. The footage captures the destruction of a grounded helicopter belonging to the armed forces of Ukraine in the vicinity of Zaparisia. The significance of this episode lies not so much in the destruction of the helicopter itself, as in the resumption of deep strike tactics against enemy rear areas following a pause of approximately 2.5 to 3 months. Recall the events of December 2025, when the Rubicon Group was actively striking radar stations, air defense systems, equipment depots, and warehouses of the Ukrainian armed forces at distances of 100 to 200 kilometers from the front line. The strikes employed BM-35 drones utilizing Starlink technology. After the Ukrainian side, working together with American companies, blocked Russia's access to this system, such deep strike operations ceased, and a broad debate emerged about the degree to which Russian operations had become critically dependent on Starlink. Today's events indicate that these strikes are resuming. The video signal quality is noticeably inferior to the December footage, which suggests one of two possibilities. Either these are new prototype systems with different technical characteristics, or Russian forces have found a temporary vulnerability in the layered Ukrainian air defense network that allows drones to penetrate to such depths. In any case, this trend must be monitored closely over time. If similar footage continues to appear, it will mean that Russia has found a systemic solution and that deep strike tactics are returning to its operational toolkit. In the Zaporizhia sector, Russian forces continue active assault operations in the areas of Verkhnya Tersa and Huliai-Pilske. Overnight publications of footage showing strikes on Ukrainian positions confirm the ongoing offensive activity. At the same time, footage has emerged suggesting that the Ukrainian counter-offensive in this area, which pro-Ukrainian sources had been reporting, may in reality amount to nothing more than limited infiltration. In particular, the presence of Russian units in Danilivka has been confirmed, a settlement that many mapping services, including pro-Ukrainian ones, had long marked as being under Ukrainian armed forces control. This significantly alters the picture of what is happening in this sector and indicates that the actual situation on the ground is considerably more complex than Ukrainian propaganda would suggest. In the Dnipropetrovsk direction, Russian forces are steadily accelerating the pace of their offensive operations. Changes to the front line were recorded over the past 24 hours. The Russian armed forces improved their position in Novopodhorodna, seizing control of a fortified strongpoint, and also consolidated their hold on the southeastern outskirts of Serhivka. The strategic objectives of the Russian command in this direction are multi-layered. The first is to advance directly onto the territory of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast from the east, a development that carries both significant symbolic and operational weight. The second is to envelop the settlement of Mezheva and then advance along the railway line. This would allow Russian forces to strike at the rear of the Ukrainian grouping along the Pokrovske, Velika Mikhailivka, Havrilivka line, precisely where Ukrainian forces are currently attempting to organize a counter-offensive. In this way, the Russian side is seeking to seize the initiative not through a frontal confrontation, but through an enveloping maneuver that threatens the enemy's lines of communication and rear positions. In the Kostyantynyvka sector, Russian aviation struck a dam located to the north of the city. Judging by the published footage, a breach has formed in the dam's body, and water has begun flooding the territory to the north of Kostyantynyvka. The strategy being employed is systematic. Several weeks ago, a dam in the western part of the city was destroyed. Now it is the northern one. The purpose is clear: to disrupt the logistics of the Ukrainian garrison by flooding roads and surrounding terrain, while also cutting off the central, southern, and eastern districts of the city from their supply lines. Russian forces have been assaulting these districts for several weeks now. For context, back in December, the commander of the southern grouping of forces named mid-February as the approximate target date for completing the main phase of the operation. It is now almost mid-March, and Russian forces are still standing at the city's outskirts. This speaks to the determined resistance of Ukrainian units and indicates that the street fighting in Kostyantynyvka is taking on a protracted character. On the Sloviansk sector and northern directions, no significant changes have been recorded. However, it is necessary to pause on an important development in Sumi Oblast. Yesterday, we drew attention to the elevated activity of Russian reconnaissance drones over this region, which was raising legitimate questions among Western analysts. Today, the reason has become clear. Russian forces have launched a broad front offensive in the direction of Sumy from the southeast, advancing through Uhroidi and Krasnopilia. Crucially, these changes to the front line map were recorded by pro-Ukrainian monitoring resources, which rules out the possibility of pro-Russian propaganda and confirms the reality of what is taking place. The Sumy direction could become one of the most significant in the coming weeks, and we will be monitoring its development closely. We now turn to the Middle East, where events are unfolding at a rapid pace and on an increasingly large scale. The key news of the past 24 hours is the United States' decision to deploy an additional carrier strike group to the region. Satellite imagery, published in part by Chinese sources, captured the transit of the aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford through the Suez Canal. The group is moving southward into the Arabian Sea to join the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, which is deployed in the area of Oman off the southern coast of Iran. The concentration of two carrier strike groups in this area signals preparation for a significant intensification of strikes against southeastern Iran and quite possibly support for a planned ground operation. But that is not all. The Pentagon has decided to dispatch a third carrier strike group, led by the aircraft carrier George H.W. Bush. The arrival of this group is expected within 1 to 3 weeks. Its mission has not yet been clearly defined. It may either reinforce the grouping off the Iranian coast or take up position in the eastern Mediterranean to ensure the security of Israel. The Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which had previously been providing air coverage in the area of Cyprus and Israel, is now relocating to the Arabian Sea. As a result, the eastern Mediterranean is temporarily left without American carrier-based coverage. The French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle, already en route toward the Israeli coast, is intended to temporarily fill this gap. Once the Bush group arrives, the French carrier will be able to withdraw from the area. In this way, we are witnessing a large-scale rotation and build-up of naval forces simultaneously across two strategically vital theaters. Against the backdrop of these movements, the President of the United States has not ruled out the use of ground forces. A significant indirect confirmation of such plans is the emergency cancellation of exercises by the 82nd Airborne Division. In military practice, the sudden cancellation of scheduled exercises typically means one of two things. Either the unit has been urgently placed on a heightened state of readiness, or it has already received orders to deploy. A number of analysts suggest that this very division may be tasked with seizing the Iranian coastline along the Strait of Hormuz, with the aim of establishing control over the waterway and creating a security corridor for the passage of tankers and cargo vessels. The imperative to act quickly is driven by an acute and worsening humanitarian crisis in the region. According to available data, the United Arab Emirates has approximately 10 days' worth of fresh food supplies remaining. For Dubai, with its multi-million population, this means imminent catastrophe. Political and military crises will in that case recede into the background, giving way to a simple shortage of food, which could trigger unpredictable social upheaval. This is precisely why the American side is operating under extreme pressure and is being forced to accelerate its decision-making. Yet even here, a serious problem arises. Even if the American side manages to establish a buffer zone along the Iranian coastline of the strait within a tight time frame and push Iranian forces deeper into the country, this will not provide a 100% guarantee of the resumption of safe navigation. Iran possesses remote sea mining capabilities. Should Iranian forces be compelled to withdraw, they could transform the strait into a minefield, making safe passage for vessels practically impossible, even in the absence of direct visual control over the waterway from the shore. The American command thus faces a strategic dilemma. A ground operation is necessary, but in and of itself, it does not resolve the long-term question of navigation security. Meanwhile, the Israeli-American coalition continues its active military operations. A large number of Iranian naval vessels have been destroyed, and strikes are being carried out against military infrastructure objects across the country. Today, the international airport of Tehran came under a massive attack, with the aim of destroying its runways and completely severing the air bridge for deliveries from China and Russia. According to assessments by American intelligence, it is through this route that Iran is being supplied with components for the production of drones, missiles, and other military hardware. China is already providing Tehran with large-scale financial and technical assistance. Russia, for its part, is sharing intelligence data and providing targeting support for Iranian missile units and unmanned systems. American losses over just a few days of combat have proven quite significant for such a short period. 5 aircraft have been destroyed, along with several expensive long-range early warning radar systems, with detection ranges of 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers. The total financial damage already amounts to several $billion. This speaks to the high combat effectiveness of the Iranian military and to the fact that the adversary clearly turned out to be considerably better prepared for confrontation with the world's leading military power than had been initially anticipated. In the northwestern direction, tensions are mounting over the possible opening of yet another front. Azerbaijani authorities have published reports of the prevention of planned sabotage and terrorist operations on their territory. Taken together with other signals, this may constitute an element of informational preparation for the introduction of Azerbaijani forces into a possible ground operation against Iran. Experts suggest that Kurdish armed formations could be involved in such an operation, and that at a certain stage, the Azerbaijani army may participate as well. Iran, for its part, declares full readiness for such a scenario and states that it is anticipating precisely this kind of development. The situation continues to escalate, and we will be following its evolution closely. That concludes today's broadcast. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and leave your likes. All the best.